Saturday mornings were sacred, not for any spiritual reason. I wasn't particularly religious, but because it was the only time the world left me alone. No buzzing phone, no work emails, no fake pleasantries. Just me, a lukewarm caramel macchiato, and my laptop that hadn't seen productive words since last October. The coffee shop had that soft kind of buzz, indie music barely audible over the murmur of conversations and the sharp hiss of steaming milk. I settled into my usual corner booth near the window, letting the weak sunlight streak across my keyboard. I was halfway through pretending to write when the bell above the cafe door chimed. And in walked the woman who would change everything. She was mid-30s, maybe older, dressed in a navy trench coat with deep mahogany curls pulled into a low bun. She moved like someone who had a purpose, not the kind of purpose that demanded attention, but the kind that made people naturally part for her. She was magnetic, even as she waited quietly in line. I wouldn't have noticed her if she hadn't turned and looked right at me. Her eyes froze. I caught it, that flicker of shock, the kind you get when you see a ghost or hear your name from an anonymous sender. She squinted, leaned slightly to the side, like changing the angle might erase whatever illusion her eyes were seeing. She grabbed her drink and then, without hesitation, approached my table. I offered a half smile, assuming she was lost or needed a chair. Instead, she said something that didn't make sense. "I'm sorry," she began, setting her drink down on the edge of my table. "But has anyone ever told you that you look exactly like someone they used to know?" I blinked, thrown by the sudden interruption. Uh, not really? Maybe a distant cousin or something?" She didn't laugh. Instead, her eyes studied my face with increasing intensity. "No," she said softly. You, you look exactly like my husband's ex. It's uncanny." "Okay, that's new," I said, trying to inject humor. Hopefully he was a handsome guy. She didn't respond. Her breathing slowed. Then, she took a step back, and her hand trembled. "Wait," she whispered. "I'm sorry. What's your name?" I didn't want to answer. Every instinct told me something was off, but curiosity won. "Eli," I said. "Eli Grant." Her entire body went still. Her drink slipped from her hand and spilled onto the floor beside her. Then she whispered, "Oh my God, it's you." The noise of the coffee shop faded away. I could still see the barista in the corner frothing milk and hear the faint jingle of someone walking in, but it was distant, like it was happening in another world. My focus narrowed to the woman in front of me, to the fear and astonishment playing tug-of-war across her face. She reached into her purse with shaky fingers and pulled out her phone, scrolling rapidly. "I didn't think this would ever happen," she muttered. "What would happen?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me. There, in a dimly lit photo, stood a man who looked exactly like me. Maybe a little younger, a little thinner, but unmistakably me. My breath caught in my throat. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man my husband used to be with." "That's you." And in that moment, I wasn't sure what terrified me more, that I looked like this person, or that a complete stranger was absolutely convinced I was him. "Have we met?" I asked slowly, a strange chill crawling up the back of my neck. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared like she was trying to process something that couldn't possibly be real. Her hands trembled as she slowly sat across from me. "No," she said finally, "but I've seen your face before." I chuckled awkwardly, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "Well, that's flattering. You must have seen me on a really good hair day." She ignored the joke. Her tone stayed serious. "My husband's ex's name was Elijah Grant. He disappeared years ago. No one could find him. They said he died." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "Well, that can't be me. I've been very much alive, thank you. Never faked my death, unless you count my high school drama class." She didn't laugh. "Where are you from, Eli?" Born and raised in Oregon, moved here for work. Why? And before Oregon? She asked carefully. I hesitated. I I don't really remember much before the age of 10. We moved around a lot. Military family. Her face darkened. Elijah Grant disappeared when he was 21. Vanished in Berlin. No trace. And you're him. You even have the same scar on your neck. I instinctively reached up. The tiny scar under my left ear. A birthmark, I always thought. I have no idea who you are, I said, suddenly wary. What is this? Some kind of scam? She shook her head. I'm Lila Avery, and I think my husband had you erased. There was no guidebook for this conversation. Nothing in life had prepared me for someone telling me that I used to be someone else, someone who supposedly disappeared, someone whose memory had been deliberately taken. How would that even be possible? I asked. You can't just delete a person. She leaned forward. What if you didn't die? What if he brought you back here and made sure you'd forget everything? I shook my head. That sounds like a bad Netflix thriller. I know how it sounds, she said softly. But the moment I saw you, I knew. You were in his photos. You have his voice, his laugh. Your left eyebrow arches the same way when you're confused. I laughed, if only to stop the spinning in my head. Lady, you're either completely delusional or… Or what? She asked. Or everything I know about myself is a lie. We stared at each other in silence. She pulled something else from her bag. A folded newspaper clipping. Yellowed with age. The headline read, American student mysteriously disappears in Berlin. Police suspect foul play. The photo below it was grainy but unmistakable. It was me. But that was impossible, wasn't it? We left the cafe. Not because I trusted her. Honestly, my guard was up higher than ever. But something about what she said, about me, stirred a question I hadn't dared to ask myself in years. Why couldn't I remember anything before the age of 10? Lila walked beside me in silence, her heels tapping against the sidewalk as the city moved around us like static. She led me to a small park nearby, quiet, semi-secluded. I sat on a bench beneath a tree, and she pulled out her phone. I didn't want to believe it, she said. But the moment I saw your face, I knew. I've seen pictures. And then, when you said your name… I get it, I muttered, rubbing my temples. But what you're saying doesn't make sense. People don't just erase someone's life. Her eyes met mine, full of equal parts sadness and steel. Not unless they have a reason. I scoffed. And what reason would your husband have to erase his ex? Lila hesitated. That's what I'm trying to find out, she admitted. But for years, Colin has kept a locked drawer in his study. I never thought much of it. We all have secrets, right? But lately, he's been distant, restless. I saw your photo on his laptop years ago, but when I asked, he said it was a friend who died in Europe. That's when he told me about Elijah. Said he lost someone important to him. She paused. He never said it was a boyfriend. He just said, someone he loved. That word hit differently. Loved. So why come to me now? I asked. Because he's acting like a man with ghosts at his heels, she replied. Last week, he got a phone call. I overheard just one sentence. He doesn't remember anything. And then he locked the door and started shredding papers. A cold sweat began forming at my neck. And you think that he is me? Lila nodded. I do. It was impossible, ludicrous, unbelievable. And yet, that old feeling of disorientation, the occasional nightmare of strange European streets, the sense that my earliest memories were more stories told to me than things I lived. There was something broken in my timeline, something jagged I had always smoothed over. I looked up at her. If this is real, I whispered, if your husband is hiding something about me, I need to know who I really am. Lila reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photograph. This is from 5 years ago, Berlin. Colin's old social media, before he scrubbed everything. She handed me the picture. My breath hitched. It was me, standing in front of a fountain, holding hands with another man. We were smiling. My hair was longer. I wore a leather jacket I didn't own, at least, not anymore. But the eyes? Those were mine. I was staring at my own past, a past I had no memory of. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned until the ceiling above my bed felt like a blank movie screen where my mind projected 1,000 what-ifs. At 2:12 a.m., I sent Lila a text. "If we're going to find answers, I need to see that drawer." She replied almost instantly. "Tomorrow, noon, he'll be at the gym." I arrived at her townhouse dressed like someone with a pizza delivery, just in case a neighbor asked. Lila let me in quietly, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds, like we were breaking into the Pentagon. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "No," she whispered, "but I'm done living with half-truths." The study was sleek and modern, shelves of books, a few framed certificates. A desktop monitor sat in sleep mode, blinking faintly in the corner. She led me to the drawer. Locked, as expected. "Give me a minute," she said, pulling out a thin piece of metal from behind a picture frame. "Colin thinks I don't know where he hides the spare keys." The lock clicked open with a metallic snap. She pulled out a brown accordion folder, thick with documents, labeled in sharp black ink. E.G. Personal. She set it on the desk, and we opened it together. First page. An American passport with my name, Elijah Grant, and a photo of the same face I saw in the Berlin picture. Stamped and signed, expired. Next. Medical records from a clinic in Germany. Patient name, Elijah Grant. Diagnosis. Retrograde amnesia, possibly induced by trauma. I read the next lines aloud. Subject exhibits memory loss following blunt force injury, likely sustained in stairwell fall. Limited recall of identity. No known family contacts. Patient released under care of C. Avery. "Colin," Lila breathed. There were more photos, emails, even boarding passes from Europe to the US. And then, a video file saved on a USB. Lila plugged it into the desktop. The video was grainy, time-stamped 6 years ago. Colin sat in a dimly lit hotel room, looking into the camera. "If you're watching this," he began, voice shaky, "then the treatment worked. He doesn't remember me. Or who he was. The doctors say it's permanent, but I know Eli. He's stubborn. He might remember one day. And when he does, he'll hate me." He sighed. "But I couldn't leave him in that life. It was eating him alive. The anxiety, the threats. Berlin wasn't safe. He begged me to make it go away." Colin looked down. "So I did." The video cut off. I leaned back in the chair, mind reeling. "Do you believe him?" I asked. Lila was shaking. "No, he's a master manipulator. He probably told himself that so he wouldn't feel guilty." She turned to me, tears pooling. "You were someone before this, Eli. Someone he tried to erase. But you're still here." And I knew, in that moment, I would find out who that man was, even if it meant tearing apart everything I thought I knew. The next few days passed in a blur of questions I couldn't answer, and memories I couldn't reach. I wandered through my apartment like a stranger, tracing the lines of a life that might not have been mine to begin with. Lila and I met again at a quiet bar downtown. She brought a duffel bag filled with what she'd taken from Colin's drawer, more than what we'd opened the other day. Dozens of documents, printouts, hard drives, even a small leather journal. "His handwriting," she said, pushing the journal toward me. I opened it slowly. The pages were filled with fragmented thoughts. "He cried last night in his sleep again. Doesn't remember why." "He asked me if we were friends. I said yes. I lied. It's been 3 months since Berlin. I miss the way he used to look at me. Before the fear, before the screaming." Each line was a dagger. Some part of me wanted to throw the journal across the room and walk away. But another part, deeper, quieter, felt the weight of every word. It wasn't just about identity anymore. It was about consent, about choice, about a version of me that had been rewritten without permission. I think I want to talk to him, I finally said. Lila nearly choked on her drink. What? He holds the key, Lila. Whether it's guilt or truth or both, I need to look him in the eyes. I need to hear it from him. She hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'll get him to meet me, somewhere public. You can watch, and when it's time, you can show yourself. We decided on a gallery, the one where Lila and Colin used to attend charity events together. Neutral territory, lots of exits. Enough noise to stay safe, but quiet enough to talk. On the day of the meeting, I stood behind a glass sculpture display, heart pounding like I was about to rob a bank. Lila entered first, then Colin, tall, composed, wearing a slate gray blazer and that same calm smile from the video. He looked like the kind of man who could talk his way out of a locked room or into someone's memories. They chatted politely at first. Article weather, upcoming travel. Then she brought up Berlin. I edged closer. You remember Elijah, don't you? She said casually, as if they were discussing old vacation spots. Colin's smile faltered. Why would you bring him up? Because, she said, her voice low, I found him. Silence. You found him, Colin echoed, like he hadn't heard it right the first time. She nodded. He's here, right now. Colin turned and saw me. His face changed. Not fear, not guilt, something else. Longing. Elijah, he breathed. You remember me. I stepped forward. No, but I remember enough to know that I didn't ask for any of this. His voice cracked. You begged me to take it all away. You were falling apart. The threats, the blackmail, they were going to kill you. I would have rather remembered that pain than live in a lie, I snapped. Colin looked down. I loved you, and I thought, if I could just protect one part of you, the part that laughed, the part that loved, then maybe I could save us both. There's no us anymore, I said quietly. And then I walked away. Outside, the night air hit me like cold water. Lila caught up, her eyes searching mine. You okay? I nodded. I don't know who I was, but I know who I am now, and I'm done letting anyone else decide that for me. The past was real. The pain, the love, the confusion, all real. But so was this moment. And in this moment, I chose myself. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. My reflection looked familiar, yet foreign, like a book you've read 1,000 times, but suddenly notice a passage you never saw before. My jawline, the scar beneath my ear, my eyes that didn't quite match. I saw pieces of Elijah Grant, but I also saw Eli, the man I had become on my own terms. I made coffee, sat at my small kitchen table, and opened my laptop. A blinking cursor greeted me. Blank page, a perfect metaphor. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to write it down, not for anyone else, just for me. For the part of me that had been lost in the cracks, waiting for someone to fill them in with truth. Lila texted later that afternoon. Lila, how are you holding up? Me? Like someone who woke up from a coma and found out he used to be a storm. Lila, that's poetic. Very Elijah. I smiled. We met again that evening, this time at a lakeside bench where wind carried the scent of pine and the hum of dragonflies filled the quiet moments. She handed me a small box. What's this? I asked. Some of your things, she said. From Colin's house. I didn't think he deserved to keep them. Inside were a few faded photos, a keychain from Prague, and a silver ring. I held the ring between my fingers, feeling its weight. It fit perfectly on my right hand. Did he ever tell you what happened in Berlin? What the threats were about? I asked. Lila hesitated, then nodded. Elijah had gotten involved with a whistleblower group, digital activism, government corruption. The people you upset weren't just politicians. They were powerful, dangerous. There was a leak. You were blamed. The threats came fast, too fast. That's when Colin convinced you to run, to disappear. It explained the shadows in my dreams, the guilt, the adrenaline I couldn't explain whenever I heard sirens. It wasn't just a memory, it was trauma, coded into my DNA. I need to finish what I started, I said quietly. Lila raised an eyebrow. You mean the leaks? Not those, I replied. The truth. I need to reclaim my voice, reclaim my story. That night, I opened a new blog. I didn't use my name, not yet. But I told the story of a man who disappeared, only to be found by a woman who wouldn't let the past stay buried. It went viral. Emails poured in, messages from strangers who said they, too, had lost themselves and had to rebuild. Some claimed to remember Elijah. A few warned me to stay quiet. But it was too late for that. A week later, I gave an interview under my full name. Not Eli. Not Elijah. Just both. Fully merged. What would you say to the man who made you forget? The interviewer asked. I paused. I'd say thank you and goodbye. Because sometimes, losing everything is how you figure out what truly matters. And I meant it. Lila and I still talk. She left Colin, started over, said it was the first time in years she remembered how to breathe. As for me, I still write. Not to escape, but to remember. To remind myself that even when your past is taken from you, your future is still yours to create. And every time I look in the mirror now, I don't just see a reflection. I see a life reclaimed, a story unfinished, and a man finally free. If this story resonates with you, hit the like button and leave your story in the comment section. And of course, subscribe to my channel for more real, raw, and ridiculous stories. Your support means everything to this channel. Thank you for watching, and remember, knowing your worth isn't selfish, it's essential.